Asian Americans, whom we will generally refer to as AAs, are the fastest growing racial group and projected to double in population by 2050. The image of the well-adjusted, successful modern minority often dismisses important mental health concerns and continue to hurt AA groups. Studies consistently demonstrate that AA students who are often children of immigrants have higher rates of depression, suicidal ideation, and suicide attempts than students from other racial groups. Despite this, young AA people are the least likely of all racial groups to seek and receive mental health services, with roughly 80% of cases left untreated. Why is that? It is not true that Asian Americans do not want to get treatment. One potential reason for this disparity is that services specifically addressing the needs of AA people are almost non-existent. For the last 10 years, I undertook a mission to understand the risk and protective factors of young Asian American women. Our research shows that factors such as Asian cultural practices, families, and gender or ethnic identities are critical components of Asian American women's mental health. Thus, we developed AWARE, the Asian Women's Action for Resilience and Empowerment Intervention. This consists of 8 weeks of face-to-face group therapy sessions led by AWARE therapists. This intervention is innovative, integrative, and holistic. Developed from years of research, I created a model called the Model of Healing, dismantling disempowerment traps that recognize the areas in which Asian American women often feel disempowered. We identified 4 specific traps on multiple levels. First, at the individual level, we identified the inner voice trap. Financial, career, and academic successes are integral to Asian Americans' identity. Pressured within these domains often generate feelings of shame, distress, guilt, and inadequacy. Second, at the family level, young Asian American women frequently struggle with disempowering parents, competing identities, and a lack of self-agency. Third, at the community level, race-related stressors are common occurrences that take the form of non-inclusive and hostile social environments. AWARE's group format will foster a safe space to discuss Asian American identity, bicultural minority stressors, and microaggressions. Final trap, the suffering alone trap, can be found at the systemic level. On a macro level, norms that go against seeking help can prevent young Asian Americans from receiving assistance they need. By providing culturally specific mental health content, AWARE can help women overcome the expectation and pressure to be silent. The AWARE group meet for 8 sessions as follows. Session 1, Introduction to AWARE. Session 2, A, B, C, D, G parenting and coping with disempowerment. Session 3, the Catch-22, the double bind. Session 4, Who do I see in the mirror? Body image and discrimination. Session 5, Romance, violence, and everything in between. Session 6, Sex and substance use. Session 7, Giving yourself grace. And Session 8, New beginnings. In Session 3, your job is to articulate the 4 disempowerment traps that depressed or suicidal Asian American women often face: the inner voice trap, the family trap, the race trap, and suffering alone trap. This model helps us understand how many Asian American women suffer from these traps and are left feeling extreme levels of emotional distress and pain. Many women might find themselves engaging in thoughts of self-harm or suicidal ideation, As group members talk through their struggles, we can help them explore the emotional distress triggered by the traps they face. Our goal is to reduce their sense of loneliness and guilt by showing that they are not alone in their negative experiences. We also introduce the concept of the double bind. The double bind is the psychological confrontation of two opposing forces, the desire for approval and affirmation from parents or society, and desire to reject or rebel against those same pressures.
One of the more powerful activities in Aware is the I am from poem. When writing these poems, group members can explore their personal histories and identities and are encouraged to show vulnerability. Later in this video, Dr. Hahm and I will share our own I am from poems as examples. You can encourage group members to take this poem writing opportunity to be creative in how they would describe themselves. You should remind them that there's no right way or wrong way to do this. It is about choosing the words they feel best describe themselves. Take the time to validate how intimidating the writing experience might feel. Aware practitioners are encouraged to also participate in this poem writing experience. We see this as one of the most effective methods of encouraging a sense of safety, belonging, and togetherness. In my experience, group members greatly appreciated my honesty and candor. For this exact reason, Dr. Hahm and I will now share our poems with you. First, my poem. I'm from the city and from the land of Petronas Twin Towers. I'm from the crazy mom, the calm dad, and the loud grandparents. I'm from street food, rainy day, and mosquito bites. I'm from spanking and criticisms, from jokes and hugs. I'm from so-and-so son is such a good piano player, and why are you so lazy? And from let's travel the world. I'm from Aya, and anxiety and atrocious jokes. I am from complicated, and I'm also from contentment, and anger, anxiety, and stability. From lonely and confused to grounded and acceptance. Now, let's hear Dr. Ham's poem.
I'm from a big city, a city that values money, power, and prestige. I'm from a big family, a family that values hard work, bonding, and being the very best. I'm from a library that loves books, discussions, and long hours of studying. I'm from a memory of my best friend's suicide and toxic high school dramas. I'm from my grandmother's warmth that reminds me of chestnuts, sweet potatoes, and sounds of cows from her farms. I'm from my mother's prayers for joy, optimism, and forgiveness. I'm from our prayers for peace, love, and inclusion.
Past experiences and trauma can impact Aware participants' mental health in serious ways. In this session, we will discuss symptoms of suicidal ideation and how to address them. Suicide is not a normal response to stress. Suicidal thoughts or actions are a sign of extreme distress and require immediate action to prevent. The suicide rate among Asian American women was already a significant public health issue even before the COVID-19 pandemic. Since 2017, suicide has become the leading cause of death among Asian American youth aged 10 to 24. Longitudinal data showed a sharp increase in suicidal ideations from 9.7% to 16.1% among young Asian Americans during their transition to adulthood from 2014 to 2018. Our Aware Intervention clinical trial also demonstrated shockingly high rates of suicidal ideation and planning among Asian American women participants. Specifically, 64% of women who participated in the study reported lifetime suicidal ideation. Among those with suicidal ideation, 44% described suicide plans, including drowning, using firearms, jumping, or hanging. Anti-Asian discrimination has become a more salient risk factor for suicidal behavior. Our preliminary study, which analyzed the mortality rates in the US, revealed a sharp increase in completed suicides among young Asian American women between 2019 and 2020. We have come to understand that Asian Americans are known as hidden suicide ideators. This means that they frequently underreport symptoms of suicide and depression. Therefore, it is important for us to recognize both obvious and subtle warning signs of ideation. For instance, someone may talk about feeling empty or hopeless, or an unbearable emotional or physical pain. They may speak about a fear of burdening others, giving away important possessions, or withdrawing from family and friends. These warning signs should be taken very seriously. Session 3 offers the space for participants to gain a deeper understanding of their pain as suicide is discussed. This is their opportunity to be heard as well, increasing the chance of them reaching out about their struggles. You can start conversations on suicidal thoughts or behaviors with honesty and compassion. There's a script example in the Session 3 materials that can help you start this conversation. Let the group know that sharing their experience may reduce their sense of loneliness and fear, and identify healthy coping mechanisms.
In Session 5, group members have the opportunity to discuss and process their romantic relationships broken down into different conversations. During this session, it was observed that many Asian American women struggled with discussing experience with abuse, violence, or unhealthy romantic relationships. The majority of discussions were about slightly unhealthy relationships or small conflicts between partners. Group members who were not in an intimate relationship talked about conflicts in non-romantic relationships or did not add to the conversation. In Aware, we refer to unhealthy and abusive relationships as intimate partner violence, or IPV. Among those who participate in Aware, our own data published in Women in Therapy revealed that IPV was in fact occurring much more frequently than mentioned in group conversations. About 1 in 2 of our research participants reported physical or sexual IPV. They experienced partners verbally insisting on having sex, partners grabbing women, or partners throwing an object at them. The prevalence of sexual coercion was 40%. 15% was physical assault, and about 4% suffered from an injury due to IPV. Despite this, group members tend to avoid conversation about IPV. Thus, as practitioners, we need to help group members feel comfortable acknowledging and talking about their struggles with IPV. Due to stigma, group members may feel too ashamed to admit that they are in a violent relationship. The loss of control in their relationship may be hard to come to terms with. Sometimes they may not even realize that they are experiencing IPV. We provide a self-assessment to help group members better understand the well-being of their relationship. I would like to highlight the negative impact of IPV on Asian American women's mental health. After controlling for other important variables, women who experience IPV were 3.3 times more likely to have suicidal ideation or intent, an impact similar to those who experience childhood physical or sexual violence. It is important to recognize a cycle of violence and victimization. In fact, One study found that Korean American women with a history of childhood abuse were 4 times more likely to experience IPV later in their life. Group members reported that learning about the prevalence of IPV among Asian American women helped them feel less alone in their experiences. You may refer to the statistic provided in our studies when your group conversation have reached a point where enough people feel comfortable talking about IPV. Be sure to gauge this comfort level as the group shares their experiences with the relationships. During these conversations, you will guide group members through breaking down the stigma of discussing IPV and understanding the cycle of violence and victimization. In session 6, we address substance use and sexual risk behaviors. These 2 issues have been particularly difficult to address among Asian American women. Many feel that substance use treatment is not relevant to them because they will not identify as having substance use issues. When discussing sexual behaviors, group members find it awkward or uncomfortable to talk about their sexual practices because it is so personal to them. The session starts with a self-quiz to help group members reflect on substance use and sexual practice questions. The aware therapist then facilitates a group dialogue about possible motives for engaging in substance use or unsafe sex. Our research findings suggest various reasons for this behavior. I would like to offer an example of how we break down a specific issue using our research. Unprotected sex is one of the most common behaviors among our participants. Here are 3 plausible explanations for that. First, young Asian American women have a preference for long-term monogamous relationships which favor less condom use. This tendency to trust in the partner comes from the assumption of monogamy. Women in monogamous relationships may underestimate their risk of contracting HIV and other STIs. The second reason for unprotected sex is the cleanliness rationale, which is the perception that partners are clean or neat, especially when they are from peer networks, prestigious universities, and viewed as the breadwinner. The third reason is casual attitude about sex, which is more prevalent among women with adverse histories. Women who experience sexual abuse, illicit drug use, or have a history of suicide attempts will have complex and potentially dangerous sexual histories. We discovered that many of these women exhibit a deep sense of worthlessness. They desire acceptance and validation from their partners. When this desire is not satisfied by their partners, it can lead to sexual risk behaviors or substance use. Our job is to introduce a framework that connects risk behaviors to past traumatic experiences or deep feelings of worthlessness. Once group members process their struggles, it will allow them to try much healthier coping strategies. The practitioners can also talk about how it is possible for these high-risk behaviors to change. We encourage practitioners to consider the complexity of Asian American women's struggles in this area and to empower themselves with the data from our research. Session 7 is titled Giving Yourself Grace. The purpose of this session is to help young Asian American women recognize their own intrinsic value and their worthiness for compassion. In some Asian American cultures, financial and academic successes are viewed as integral to one's identity. This immense pressure can turn to shame when these expectations cannot be met, women may maintain a critical inner voice from the childhood, which puts them at risk of cognitive distortion. Shame and guilt can be very challenging to address. Sometimes they think that practicing kindness toward themselves is an act of selfishness. As practitioners, we can help group members slowly overcome this mindset by providing psychoeducation that promotes self-compassion. Being kind to oneself does not mean we stop being thoughtful or kind to others. Putting self-compassion first will then allow one to do more for family and community members.
Let's talk about the 3 elements of self-compassion that we'll share with the group. The first element is self-kindness. In facing our failings, suffering, or feelings of inadequacy, it is important for us to learn how to be kind, warm, and understanding to ourselves. The second element is common humanity. This means that isolated suffering and feelings of personal inadequacy are part of a shared human experience, rather than something that only I am experiencing. The third element is exercising mindfulness. Mindfulness means taking a balanced approach to our negative feelings so that we are neither suppressing them nor over-identifying with them. This allows for some objectivity in identifying our current issues and helps us move forward. Self-compassion allows us to recognize that all individuals have strengths and weaknesses, and that we're all worthy of compassion. It is not a sum of our worth, but rather a chance to put our situation into perspective. In this session, participants will complete several activities with these 3 elements in mind. They will write specific words to describe themselves, write a letter to myself, as well as practice a self-compassion break meditation. These activities are as proactively mindful as they are therapeutic.